right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Welcome your faces back to another episode of Trendz. I'm your host, Dan Williams, or as I'm colloquially known, PommyInOz. Grab yourself a brew, sit your send down. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button to check out all the fabulous content we have here on Inner Sanctum. And let's get into another episode where we're looking at Collingwood Football Club. So let's take a look at them. Collingwood, for me, are one of them teams, and I think I'm quite a good person to talk about this, being a Carlton fan myself. I think there is no one in the world who probably wants to see Collingwood fail as much as a Carlton fan. However, I do think it's, I wouldn't say lazy journalism. I also almost think it's kind of a want for them to fail. And these are many people's selections for the side to fail. Now, let's have a look at why. Last year, obviously, they finished in the top 4. Age rank this year is 5th. Games rank 7th for experience. And this is the big stat that everyone looks towards. Games won by less than 2 goals, 7. Now, it is probably easy to say, okay, they won some tight games, they're definitely going to slide. I actually think there's a little bit more to that, and there's some misleading stats here already. I think when you actually look at Collingwood's makeup as a draft, as a list, I think that you actually notice that although them numbers look bad in age-wise, they have a plethora of talent in that under 22, under 23 category. Do you know what I mean? They've brought in Bobby Hill, but then there's a lot of question marks on players like Bo McCreary, who I thought was archetypical of their real Hail Mary game style that is hard running, corridor using, brute strength, a lot of ignorance, and it really caused chaos. And it's a modern day chaos ball, and Bo is a big part of that. They've got some young players as well that we haven't quite seen yet. Charlie Dean, highly rated, in and out of injury. Aidan Begg, Finlay McRae, one to watch out for. You've got Dacos, obviously, Arlo Draper. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got the new kids as well that we're going to see at some point this year, Ed Allen and Jacob Ryan. And it's interesting that when you go through their VFL list and their young players, you can see direct replacements for their best 22. And I think that games rank is a huge leader there. I think Nick Dacos had such a splendid year last year because they were able to really protect him. You saw Scott Pendlebury utilised off halfback to allow in their midfield minutes when he did pinch hit there. There's a lot of players there to protect. And I think one of the big things about the Collingwood Football Club this year that isn't talked about is a man that probably gets a lot of hate, let's be honest. And that is this gentleman here, Tom Mitchell, who, in my opinion, is going to really change up how Collingwood play. Let's have a look at Tom Mitchell as a footballer last season. 22 games played, 29 years of old. He is a mid, as we know. And last year, he ranked 35th in the league for his positions, according to our Trendz ranking. And I think what is wonderful about Tom Mitchell is kind of the articles that are written about Collingwood. It is a really easy thing to say that he doesn't damage you. However, when you look at his time, particularly at Hawthorn, I think you see kind of Buckley gave you the answer of what Mitchell does well. And if you remember that game where he had 50-odd touches, they focused on Isaac Smith, and that is where Tom Mitchell kills you. That is where he does. He finds the ball 25 to 35 times and manages to slide it to someone that does do the things that he's criticised for. That is the direct football. That is line-breaking speed. That is cutting team zones apart. And he is the most integral part of that. And that is his strong suit. And it's interesting because when you look at Collingwood's football last year, what were they weak at? Centre clearances, stoppage clearances. They were the question marks. They were the question marks. And it was this whole women of prayer kind of game style. People downplayed it. Tom Mitchell is going to be giving this ball to players who are of ilk. And we're going to look at some of these players he's going to give to that I suspect will have career best years potentially from it. The first guy we're going to look at, in my opinion, is one of the most damaging players in the AFL and very understated when he gets lines to break. And this guy here was integral to Collingwood's system last year. They played that high energy brand, that high corridor brand, and a guy who was genuinely doing that and running through them lines and causing defense zonal systems to really react to the pressure that was marauding in front of them was Mr. Jack Crisp. Now, with Tom Mitchell, a bit like Isaac Smith in the terms of when Isaac Smith in these Hawthorn days used to cut into the stoppage and come in from out wide, Jack Crisp is going to be very direct running patterns. And for me, the best player in the league at direct running patterns around stoppages is Tuck Miller. He kills you, particularly in them stoppage situations. He hangs out the back of that stoppage and goes straight in and waits for the handball received. Jack Crisp getting these handballs from Tom Mitchell to break lines, to hurt you with his foot speed, it's going to cause chaos for a lot of systems. And as we saw last year, I don't think Collingwood had the perfect personnel to play that system. Jack Crisp with Tom Mitchell is deadly. And for me, that's someone that I'm looking at in this. If he can stay fit for the whole year, like he did last year, look out. Another guy who's going to benefit for me is this guy. A lot of the times last year in the 18 games played, Taylor Adams is deployed as that kind of Patrick Cripps enforcer role. Now, let's use Patrick Cripps as an example. This year, just gone, he won the Brownlow, and I would credit that's not Cripps' skill that's won that. That's the fact that Carlton had Hewitt and Kennedy doing 70% of the hard yakka that Cripps had to do for 4 quarters. Suddenly, Tom Mitchell extracting that pill allows Taylor Adams now to do what Cripps does. And that is not be the first point of call, but create running lanes for Jack Crisp. What he's very good at, shepherding. He's incredibly good at that. Them little intrinsic things that we don't talk about. Another thing as well, it's going to keep him fresh. He can go to players in short spurts because they're going to ascertain a little bit more dominance around that centre clearance. But the big thing for me as well is people forget Taylor Adams' ability to hit targets in fields of play is incredibly high. If you go back and watch some of them tight games, Taylor Adams invariably is surrounded by 4 players and manages to thread that outlet ball to a runner. So I think this is going to help him because now he isn't doing 90% of the hard yakka. He's probably going to split it up. It's going to be like 50-50. Tom Mitchell's going to be that guy getting dirty. And that is what Mitchell is good at, extracting the pill. And I think that's going to benefit Taylor Adams. The next guy we're going to look at is we talked about Isaac Smith, the 10th best winger on Trendz in the AFL, Josh Dacos. 25 games last year, 24 years of old. This guy here has got something, in my opinion, that is quite special. Do you know what I mean? He was top 10, top 15 last year for time on ground, top 20 for the amount of uncontested possessions. And there was a plethora of games, particularly that Geelong game where you saw 29 touches against a team that are masters in spatial awareness because they play that narrow ground. They spread incredibly well, Geelong, probably the best side in the league, and it's why they play such an effective brand. Josh Dacos loved it. He found that traffic. He found them cutting zones. And it's a common misconception about wingers in today's game. And I want you to take the round ball for an example. When I was a kid at 37 now, wingers were like David Beckham. They kept their width and they crossed the ball in. And then there was this little guy called Cristiano Ronaldo who came along, started cutting inside. Suddenly everyone did it. Ronaldinho, when he played for Barcelona, cut inside. Messi, when he made his debut on the wing, ironically, cut inside. Players cut inside. Nowadays, it's about almost fluid width. And you look at the best players, your Ed Langdons, your Carl Amons, your Dacoses, their ability to pincer in and create funnels and direct defensive plays, but also become an additional inside midfielder by being placed in the centre in them attacking situations, creates chaos. It overloads defensive zones. And that is the one weakness of a zone, the overload. And Dacos is splendid at doing this. And that is one of the guys who will be looking at Tom Mitchell and going, Mitchell's outlet kick is genuinely out wide. And that's why him and Isaac Smith played incredibly well together. Incredibly well. It's why when you looked at when he was at Sydney, they were the beneficiaries of these players. And Tom Mitchell, for me, is going to love having Josh Dacos on his list. And another guy that we're going to look at who probably will play a little bit more midfield time as the season goes on, without a shadow of a doubt. This kid is one of the best, if not the best, under 20 in the league, and that is Nick Dacos. And he had a splendid year last year, 24th already for halfback. We expect that to be more midfield time. You look at his junior year, and I was a big advocate of Nick Dacos was the best junior by a Flemington straight. His ability to be hit outside of traffic was where he was damaging. Very Dustin Martin, that if you can get him, so he's only got to have a one-on-one or a one-on-two, and he's running and he's built ahead of steam, almost impossible to stop. And that is Tom Mitchell's strength. He hits you when you're in space so you can do something damaging. And he is a player that I am incredibly excited about working with, Tom Mitchell, and he will go off. And Nick Dacos already in himself, the number one disposal getter for juniors. Do you know what I mean? Number one in pretty much every avenue. But you know what is really important? Top 7 in disposals. Top 14 in kicks per game. Top 6 in effective disposals AFL wide. This kid in space hurts you. This kid in space hurts you. And Tom Mitchell, his whole bread and butter isn't his damaging. It's the fact that when he gets the ball 35 times, that goes to a damaging player 30. So effectively see his, and I implore the media to look at how Mitchell plays. It's what he's doing with the ball. He ain't going to do a Dustin Martin. He, though, he's giving it to players of that ilk that hurt you out in space so they can do what they do. He's basically an accommodator. He accommodates skillful players. And Nick Dacos is going to be someone that will thrive. But the guy that I really want to talk about in pre-season who stood out is Jordan De Goey. Much derived character, isn't he? But let's talk about his football. As a footballer, this guy here has got a level. And there is a level we haven't seen. Now, last year, top 15 in centre clearances, top 20 in total centre clearances. We've seen him get a lot more on-ball time as well in pre-season. He's been one of their primary guys around stoppage. And his ability to go forward as well, now that they've got McStay, I think creates another avenue for this gentleman. And when you look at De Goey last year, just under a goal a game, 21 touches, this is going to be the type of guy that he's being hit up as he's on a burst. And De Goey could be a game changer here. And the thought of him working with Tom Mitchell, I think, is an incredibly exciting time to look. And you look at where Tom Mitchell's had success with players. Jaeger would be a good example. Parts of Walpole. De Goey's another level to these players. And he's a player here that I think people are sleeping on. And I hate to say it as a Carlton fan, but I think De Goey could be a huge game changer for Collingwood going to that next level. Because you look at the things that Collingwood were weak at last year, it's not hard to fix. Do you know what I mean? It's not hard. The clearance numbers, do you know what I mean? That's okay. Do you know what I mean? At times, defensively in the centre, they weren't so good, but that was because they gave up the confidence around there. They didn't kick mark so much. That's going to change. That's going to change with the personnel they've brought. And I think it could be a really interesting factor, particularly when we haven't touched on 2 players they've brought. Bobby Hill, who I think suddenly adds a dimension there, bit of game changing, but Dan McStay and his runs from that centre half forward up the ground create avenues of space in behind him, which I think your players like De Goey will enjoy feasting off, particularly around them stoppage moments. So that is Collingwood. I don't think you should sleep on them. In my opinion, I think they still will be a top 8 side, and I think the droppers will come elsewhere. Part of me as a Carlton fan hopes they do stay there, because I think a final at the MCG is something secretly both fan bases want. But until next time, thank you very much. Make sure you drop a like. Please make sure you share this on your socials. And until next time, Trendz out.